Hey guys, what's going on? Welcome back to another AP Sports video. Today I'm going to be talking about the New York Knicks and basically what they've done over the last 2 or 3 years to get where they are now, and how I think they're going to do from here and what I think they should do. So I'm going to start in the 2018-2019 NBA season. The biggest trade and I guess really the best pick that they've made in the last couple of years was Kristaps Porzingis. He got traded in the 2018-2019 season to the Dallas Mavericks in a deal that included Dennis Smith Jr., and he was a large selling point of that trade. He actually didn't have an awful rookie year. I know he hasn't really panned out since then, but at the time, at least, I thought that he had potential, and he still does. He's incredibly athletic. But they got Dennis Smith Jr. along with 2 first-round picks for Porzingis and Tim Hardaway. And those are 2 very good players, but with those 2 players, the Knicks opened up a maximum salary slot, and so going into an offseason where 2/3 of the NBA was going to be available, that's obviously massive. And so you have Kevin Durant and Kyrie Irving are both free agents. Those are the 2 guys that were really, kind of supposed to go to the Knicks, at least projected to go there by Knicks fans. They ended up going to New York, but sadly, not the Knicks. They went to the Nets. So the Brooklyn Nets got them too, while the Knicks kind of had to settle and didn't really even get their first choices in free agency just because they waited so long for those decisions. And so obviously Knicks fans, after all that, are not excited about the Porzingis trade. He was an incredible player. He's gone now. Tim Hardaway was good. He's gone now. But even then, they had hope going into the draft that season too, just because, the Knicks were awful. They could have gotten Zion Williamson, but they didn't. They ended up with the 3rd pick, which honestly is nothing to shake a stick at. That's a great pick, especially with how the lottery works nowadays. And they ended up getting R.J. Barrett, who has not been a bad player by any means, but he has not been Zion Williamson. And he hasn't been what Knicks fans wanted. So the 2019-2020 offseason, this is after that draft. So obviously Kevin Durant, Kyrie Irving didn't go there. But they did sign Julius Randle for 3 years from the New Orleans Pelicans. He actually had looked very good with the Pelicans while Anthony Davis was sitting out of games. So that was a pickup that I was, happy with. I was glad Julius Randle got to go somewhere where he was going to play and get good minutes. I didn't necessarily think he could contribute to a winning team unless it's off the bench. Obviously, this series sort of changed that narrative. I still don't know if I'd call the Knicks a winning team. But so far they are, and he's at least changed my mind in that aspect. I obviously watched Julius Randle a lot that season, just because I am a pretty big Pelicans fan, so I really wanted to see him do well in New York, just like he had done in New Orleans. Obviously, neither were really very great situations winning-wise. Elfrid Payton, another guy who was on the New Orleans Pelicans prior to this 2019-2020 season, he got signed for 2 years. He had a very good season with the Pelicans as well. He actually had multiple triple-doubles to end the year. I think he had a stretch of 4 in a row, which was super impressive. He was good defensively. He was great passing the ball, good facilitator. His 3-point shot seemed to come on towards the end of the year. It's still not incredible, but it looked good. And so I was really encouraged that he went there too. Those are 2 guys that I really liked in New Orleans, and I'm glad they went to New York. Obviously not the best situation in the world for players, at least at this point. Obviously it's looking up, but I'll get into that later. They also signed Reggie Bullock, who was decent last season. This season's provided really valuable minutes. Then another guy I want to talk about who's going to kind of lead me into what I'm going to talk about later with what I think the Knicks should do is Marcus Morris. He actually later that season ended up being traded to the Clippers for a first-round pick, which turned into a very, very good young point guard, Emmanuel Quickley, as well as another second-round pick that they ended up trading to the Clippers. So this offseason, the Knicks hired Tom Thibodeau, which obviously is a massive change. Tom Thibodeau is an incredible coach. He does have his fair share of issues, though. Most of those are not basketball. Most of his teams win games. I mean, they aren't necessarily... His philosophies on the court aren't bad, but he does have his issues. He tends to overplay players most of the time until they get injured, or even in these early stretches, there was a game where Julius Randle played 44 minutes, and that's just... that's a lot of minutes. That is not sitting out much. And so that was obviously impressive from Julius Randle, but that's not something you can maintain an entire season. So it seems Tom Thibodeau still kind of has those issues. I would like to see him obviously play these young guys, but I don't want him overplaying them. Like R.J. Barrett, He's had 39-minute games, like 35, 36, just very high-minute games. I think RJ should be in the 34 range just because of how young he is. And Julius Randle, obviously, he's a guy that, is not necessarily even in a contract year, so I'm kind of confused on why he's getting played as much as he is. He's a guy that I would want to keep healthy for a little bit, especially what I get into later. But I still think he should be, 35 minutes a game. But anything over 40, I think, is a bit overdone. And so I think he should probably, pull the reins a little bit on some of these guys. But this season he has done a better job, of course, managing those injuries. It's not like he's overplayed Emmanuel quickly. He was a guy that got injured. They drafted and actually got injured early in the season. He has not been playing massive minutes since that injury, so that's something I'm glad to see he's sort of improved upon. He's kind of easing quickly back in, and I'm really glad that he's not, kind of pushing him to his limit, because he is a great player, and I really think that he can do well in the future. So that's this offseason. They also signed Austin Rivers, who has been very, very valuable off the bench for them. Tom Thibodeau doesn't really utilize his bench that much, but this year, as much as any he has, Austin Rivers has looked very good, especially shooting the ball. He's been incredible from three, shooting over 40%. Alec Burks as well. He's been an incredible piece off the bench, scoring in pretty good bunches, especially when Emmanuel quickly was out. And they also picked up Nerlens Noel, who can back up Mitchell Robinson. I think that he's a guy that they actually might even move on from. I would say a couple teams out there that lack centers may want him, especially if a couple guys go down towards the trade deadline. And so they also, of course, this year there was the draft. They drafted Obi Toppin with their first-round pick, 8th overall, or was it? Yeah, 8th overall. And then their second first-round pick, which they got by trading Marcus Morris, they selected Emmanuel Quickley, which was initially the 23rd pick, but they traded down and got the 25th pick. And so this season so far, they are 4-3, which is obviously a winning record. That's not something you've seen the Knicks have in the last couple seasons. If you're a Knicks fan, I'm happy right now. A winning record is something that you don't see very often for this team, especially in the last 5 to 6 seasons. They've been pretty poor. But it's not even like that they have these wins. It's the quality of these wins. They beat the Bucks by 20. That's a very, very good basketball team. That team was the best in the East the entire last season. And Giannis, it's not like Giannis sat out that game. He played the entire game. Then you have the Cavaliers. That team was undefeated at the time that the Knicks beat them. The Pacers, who are a very good team, they're 5-2, and basically a perennial playoff team. And I would honestly argue that they have 3 all-star caliber players. Obviously, I think only one of them will be an all-star, but I think Oladipo's been good, Domantas Sabonis has been good, and Malcolm Brogdon's looked very, very good too. And then you have the Atlanta Hawks, who also have shown that they're no joke. They look like a playoff team this season. So it's the quality of their wins as well that's super impressive to me. The 4-3 record, obviously you can look at a lot of these teams early in the year and say, yeah, they're kind of against bad teams, but the scheduling for this team has not been easy, so I've been really impressed. So Tom Thibodeau, all of his teams are going to play very hard, as I was mentioning earlier. He tends to overplay guys, but you must play hard if you want to play for him. You're going to have to be strong, you're going to have to be physical. He likes to play his starters big minutes, which is, personally for me, I don't think that this team is going to be able to keep up the pace it's on, just because he's playing his starters massively over where I think they should be playing. I know it's critical to win games early in the season, but you've also got to think about the health of these guys later in the season, as well as winning games later in the season. You're not going to be able to give the same effort if you're playing 45-plus minutes every night. It's just not fair for the team. So I think that a lot of these guys' minutes are honestly going to go down a little bit. Thibodeau did say he's kind of learned from his past mistakes. Not everybody's, Jimmy Butler, and there are going to be guys like Derrick Rose that are injury prone. You can't overplay them, and you got to give them time to get back. So that's what I've liked with kind of what he's done with Emmanuel Quickley. I know I talked about it earlier, but he just did not overplay him, which honestly, I think all Knicks fans should be excited. That's something that he has had real issues with, is when guys would come back from injuries, he'd overplay them. I just think in general his players are being overplayed, though, because if you're a high-energy team right now and you're winning because of hustle plays and being strong on defense, that can't last in a season where there are more back-to-back games than ever. It's not a very sustainable way to win when you have a mixture of veteran and younger guys. If it's like a very, very young team, I guess maybe, but even then I wouldn't do it. But even going into the season, I had no doubt that this team would not be dead last, just because he does get his players to play hard. But they do have their issues. Now, some of the issues I've kind of seen with the Knicks is in every single one of their wins, they've had more turnovers than the other team. They even had like double digits more than the Cavaliers and somehow still won. I don't think that that's a very sustainable pattern. If you give the other team more shots, more opportunities, they're obviously going to capitalize on them. But one thing I have liked about the Knicks is honestly their ability to move the ball. That's kind of been something that I have not liked about the Knicks these last couple seasons. I felt like Julius Randle was kind of a black hole. He wouldn't really be an incredible passer. He'd just get in the paint, go left. That's kind of what he would do. This season, obviously, he's had a triple-double. He's averaging a decent amount of assists. All of that's really impressed me. Even RJ Barrett's done a good job passing. He's another guy that's kind of been, I'm either shooting this or I'm just doing one more swing pass. So their passing has been really good, and the quality of shots they're getting is very good. They take the least amount of threes in the NBA, but they hit at a really good percentage. So you can tell they're either working for layups deeper in the shot clock or they're getting open threes, which obviously is great. The more open the shot, the more likely it is to go in. And that's something they're going to have to continue to do, especially if they give the other team more opportunities with these turnovers. So what I believe the Knicks should do this season, Knicks fans obviously super happy right now, winning record, but I don't know how sustainable this is, as I've brought up. I don't think this is a team that's going to last long term. Julius Randle's young, but a lot of these guys are on expiring contracts this season. So you're headed more so towards like a rebuild unless you keep on adding guys on 1 or 2 year contracts like they've done these last couple years. Hopefully this season makes the Knicks look more attractive as a free agent spot. I mean, I honestly personally would think it would, just because they're winning more and Tom Thibodeau looks to be an above average coach, something the Knicks haven't had in a while. But I think that they should do something similar to what they did with Marcus Morris. A lot of these guys have played pretty well, especially in the beginning of the season. I don't think their trade value is going to get any higher than it is right now. So guys like Julius Randle, obviously he would be massive to trade. Hey guys, what's going on? I came back after editing this video and I wanted to add one more thing. I didn't really address why I think the Knicks should trade Julius Randle, because he's obviously been such a great player for them this season as well as the season prior. Even though they weren't a very good team, he still looked solid. Now, a couple of the reasons I don't necessarily like him on this team is, one, because of his turnovers. He does turn the ball over a lot. And another reason would be, even this season, I would say this season a little less, just because he's played a lot on the perimeter compared to the year prior. He gets in the way of RJ Barrett so many times just because he's predominantly in the paint, and both of those guys are incredibly left-handed dominant. They don't really have a great right hand. And so obviously this encourages RJ to get a better right hand when driving, but you're basically taking away RJ Barrett's main strength in his driving ability. Because he's so large and physical, I think you really take away from RJ Barrett, basically becoming a potential star. I really think that him driving to that left side is what makes him such a great player. He's incredible finishing around the rim, and he can really get there with ease with his physicality and draw a lot of fouls. I know this season he hasn't really, gotten some of the respect he deserves. I watched some of their highlights, and he gets hit hard on a lot of these drives, but he still finishes. So I think if Julius Randle either potentially is able to move to being like almost, if they could play like more of a 5-out type thing, or 4 out 1 in with Mitchell Robinson in the middle, I think that could work. But I don't like how RJ Barrett basically gets the entire left side of the court taken away, which is where he's basically been. That's why he got drafted number 3 overall. If you look at it at Duke, like, he was incredible going to his left. And so I think with that, I really think that RJ Barrett, if you want him to flourish and become the player that at least he should be, he was drafted 3rd overall, then I think that you need to move on from Julius Randle. And that's not to mention Julius Randle's turnover issue. I think that that's the issue he had with the Pelicans, the issue he had last year, it's the issue he had this year. He's not a very great ball handler, and he doesn't always make the best decisions. I know this season he's got a lot of assists, but he also has a lot of turnovers. And obviously that comes with being more ball dominant. But I just think if the Knicks really want to do the right thing for their future, I know Julius Randle's a great player, but I really think they could get a lot for him if they traded him now and really allowed RJ Barrett to just be a great player, because I know he can be if he gets to that left side. Stick with him. But guys like Austin Rivers, he's on a smaller contract but has been playing incredibly well. Alec Burks, same thing. And even Dennis Smith Jr., I feel like guys could take a flyer on him. And then you have guys like Elfrid Payton as well. So all of those guys have played very well this year. I think their trade value's got to be up there. And if you can squeak out a first-round pick or two, I mean, that's very impressive and honestly something to look forward to if you're a Knicks fan. Now, this team has been 2 years away from being 2 years away for a long time now. And if they can stock up on these draft picks, I really do think that their future is right around the corner where they can start to win some of these games. I think they have their coach of the future, and that's something that I would be really excited about if I'm a Knicks fan. Obviously, Tom Thibodeau has his downsides, but his upsides are also incredible. He basically led a Bulls team that was the 1 seed, and some of the teams that he has coached have been incredible. Even when he was in Minnesota, I don't necessarily think he got a fair deal there. I don't think the roster was incredible, but he did have them as the 4 seed 1 season with Jimmy Butler. And so if I'm a Knicks fan, as I said, just be happy. Your team plays hard and looks motivated for the first time in years. But you also should be happy because you kind of have your roster of the future sort of figured out. And even then, you have a lot of other guys you can make available to trades and stuff like that. And so right now, their point guard of the future, in my opinion, would be Emmanuel Quickley. I don't think Dennis Smith has looked good at all. Stats can back me up on that. I mean, he barely even plays as is. It's looking like his future in the NBA is questionable at best. But you have Emmanuel Quickley at point guard, and then RJ Barrett can either play shooting guard or small forward. They're missing whichever position he doesn't play. But then you have Obi Toppin, who they drafted this season. He has been hurt, but showed slight flashes in sort of some of those preseason games. And then Mitchell Robinson, who's been very good. You obviously can't really rely on him to be one of your main scorers, but he's looked good defensively and rebounding the ball. I mean, he's incredibly big and athletic for his size, so that's always a plus. But if you guys have anything to say in the comments, please do. Make sure to like and subscribe. As always, I really enjoy getting into discussions with you guys in the comments. So if you could do that, that would be great. If you're a Knicks fan, just let me know what you think about this year, and let me know if you guys think you should just ride it out, see what seed you get, or if you do think that trading some of these guys would be a good idea. Thanks so much for watching, guys, and peace.